And in the UK at that time, the common sign was no dogs, no blacks, no Irish.
We would like to acknowledge that we are on stolen Yuggera and Turrbal lands, and as settlers of colour, we reflect upon the damaging legacy of colonisation. Always was, always will be. Today we sit down with Chris J, a reggae sound system founder, community organiser and facilitator who moved here from the UK many years ago. He talks me through the history of sound system culture, reggae music, and he spins a few vinyls, including the very first record he ever made way back in 1994.
My name is Chris J, that's my pseudonym. I run a record label called Dubwise Productions. I've run that since 1994. I still bring out records on vinyl format. That's my main format, so everything I play, everything I do pretty much is on vinyl. I now am involved in Champion Sound based in Brisbane. We're a not-for-profit organisation. Although we didn't start like that, we started as a sound system, so that's what Champion Sound is a sound system. And I'm a part of that with my colleagues John Lumley and Marco. Well, this song is called Such in a Bad State, and it's by Olja.
Can't you see what's happening to our world right now? My world is such in a bad state today. Madness in the streets, I say. Yet the people, they cannot find a way. What a world is such in a bad state today. Madness in the streets, I say. Wickedness amongst the poor and the needy. The vibes in my head makes it so hard to live. They always want to
Right,
take.
and can you tell me about that song? What's your connection to it?
I'm a DJ, I play music, I do events, I look for music that I find motivational, inspirational, that I like. I heard that song. In fact, I bought that from a friend of mine who I can tell you a story about in the UK, David Dubwise. He's a record distributor. And I just came across it and I just wanted to have it. It's by a label out of Holland, I do believe, Solomon Heritage, and they've been making some beautiful reggae music. They're a sound system out of Holland, yeah.
Right. So I'd love to get more into the Champion Sound story a little bit later, but first you touched on David Dubwise. Would you be able to share a bit about that tale?
Yeah, interesting. So I met Dave probably back in 1992 through a mutual friend, William King. What it is, back then I just wanted to make music, believe it or not. So early 90s, what was happening? I had a sound system called Maccabee. Lots of us in that sound, 12 people in that sound system. We were young. Well, at that time we were getting older. I was probably about 30 maybe then, back then. So what happens is in sound systems you have a lot of people together collectively working. People get older, people have relationships, things happen, people move, and eventually that sound system, there was only myself and one other, Junior B, running the sound, which was fine. I always wanted to make a record because I was playing record and I thought, wow, it would be a great legacy if I could make a record and leave a record behind, as it were. I asked other friends, I said, look, do you want to make a record? I had a basic understanding of the keyboard, of the piano. I did piano lessons when I was a kid. My mum put me through that.
Right.
And I just felt I could make a record. That's what I wanted to do. I'm not a singer, but in this industry, as I'll explain, we've all got a part to play. So even though I can't sing, I can find a singer. But maybe I can make a beat and I can find a bassist to play over that beat or whatever, to build it, embellish it. That's the word I'm looking for.
Right.
And so I was turning about 30. The sound was, I thought, I don't really have to see a future in doing the sound system thing. It's a lot of work. There are so few of us actually doing it. I thought, let me get into music production is what I wanted to do. But many people that I knew at the time were scared of that commitment.
Right.
There was a financial commitment. Pressing 1,000 records cost money. The studio back then, there was no MIDI. There was pretty much minimal MIDI. No, I shouldn't
Right.
say. It wasn't accessible so easy.
And can you set the scene time-wise? We're talking 19...
So 1994 was when I
Okay.
made my first record.
Right.
Yeah. Vinyl record. And funny enough, it's a jungle record,
Right.
which I'll play later. It was called Champion Sound. I sampled a few songs that I was into, reggae songs.
Wow.
Back then, jungle was an emerging format, maybe reasonably established by that time, 2, 3, 4 years. There was a whole acid house. Man, I probably need to go back if I go into that story, but what it was, you had reggae music come out of Jamaica. You had Caribbean people moving around the world, and in my case, my parents moved to England. But we had that connection still to Jamaica, to the Caribbean, and Jamaica was where reggae was coming from. In
Right.
Jamaica, there were so many sound systems. There were our idols in many ways. Social commentary, talking about things in
Right.
England back in the 70s. I was born in 63. I don't know if I just said that, but so in
No.
the 70s.
Right.
I was a teenager, and there was lots of social problems, social issues. Police could stop you, pick you up, go through your pockets.
Right.
They could arrest you on some random kind of thing just because they didn't like the look of you.
Yeah.
Many things happened. And in a way, I don't want to stress it too much, in a way, we were disengaged from mainstream society. Our parents were working. We were first generation Caribbean, so our parents came from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
They went to the UK.
Were they part of the Windrush generation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. So,
Okay.
so I was born in 63. I was born in the UK, but my brothers, 2 of them, were born in Jamaica.
Okay.
So it's that kind of thing. So my parents went to the UK. They left my brothers in Jamaica while they established a life. Do you know
Oh,
what
they
I mean?
got set up, but had you over there whilst they were getting established?
So I was born in England. My
Yeah.
sister was born in England, but 2
Right.
of my brothers were born in Jamaica.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, that whole thing.
Real blended family in
Yeah.
terms of upbringing. Yeah.
Well, when I say brought up, I'm not phrasing it correctly. So it probably took them a year maybe to establish themselves. So very quickly, my brothers were in England. So it's not like they were brought up away from us.
Okay.
I was, in fact, by the time I was born, they were in England, so I didn't know them being in Jamaica.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's like my dad went to the UK first, and then he sent my mum, and then so you can imagine,
Yeah.
we didn't all go together.
Right,
Put it
right.
that way.
Yeah, because the logistics of migration are often far more complex than we might
Oh,
think
fully.
about, right?
And in
Yeah.
the UK at that time, I mean, gosh, there's a whole new story there again. So when my parents or my dad was looking for places to live, the common sign was no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. Or maybe not in that order, and that's a common sign. So if you said it to a Caribbean person brought up in the UK of my generation, that's what we were familiar with. And that's why Caribbean people, and probably most migrants all around the world, I can get it, tend to move together in common areas where they can have
Right.
an understanding. So in England, my parents moved to Hackney, and that's where there was a thriving Caribbean community.
Yeah.
And I was born in Hackney myself, and so
I mean, to me, it totally makes sense that you felt like you were on the margins and outside of the system when, I've been watching a series of movies that go under small acts that cover this 80s, 90s period of West Indian communities in London. And it's, both from what you're describing and what I see in those films is this real overt racism from the institution through the arm of the police. And it's like, of course, you're going to exist on the margins and create your own reality when you're just like being pushed away, or like in one of the Small Axe films, like a legitimate black-owned restaurant business is just getting routinely targeted and just smashed with batons. And I'm sure there must be countless stories like this, right?
Well, and this is the thing again, though, Dylan, ultimately, reggae music, it came from, so we even have to go back. So my parents, born in Jamaica.
Yeah.
I'm a black person. My parents are black people.
Yeah.
But ultimately, black people weren't originally from Jamaica.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
not that my parents dwelled on that story. They never talked to me about that story, but it's one that I've learned as I've grown up and become an adult, clearly.
And that's a colonial trade story as well, right? Yeah.
Well, totally. So slavery from Africa.
Yes.
Taking people to Jamaica and the Caribbean to work on the plantations. That's where my parents ultimately descended through. And then they decided to move to the UK for a better life.
Do you have a sense of which parts of Africa those threads come through for you?
No, I don't. Not at all.
Because
Not at all.
the history is really held by the victors, right? So it's hard for us to
Well,
kind of
funny
trace
enough,
our
in this
roots.
day and age, it may become easier with DNA testing,
But even the DNA testing, I feel like, is so whitewashed because who are the kind of people that like go, oh, I think I'll go check out my heritage today. Like it's not often folks that look like you and I, right? So I feel like even the system is skewed in the with the white lens. Like so many like music, like film, like so much of the whole system is built by white folks for white folks, and it even comes down to genealogy, gene testing.
I hear you, but to be honest, this is why I believe I'm so excited about reggae and what it represents.
Right.
So back in Jamaica, you had slavery, and one day they said, okay, you're free now. I don't know when that day was, but you can imagine. So you've got slavery and bondage.
Yeah.
You've been flogged, whatever else goes on with slavery, you can imagine. One day they say you're free, but then you haven't got a house, you haven't got land, you haven't got a job, you haven't got anything. So really, what does freedom ultimately mean? You're still going to be...
Right. And we're still
beholden.
about that period and just how much compensation was given to the slave owners and just like that it continued to increase the divide there.
My understanding is within the last 10 years, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It's something like that. In the UK, they paid off the last slave owner.
That's right.
For their reparations.
Because it was like for 50 years or for 100.
Well, more than 50 would it be 100 plus.
100 years
they were paying
in the
off
future. Wow.
Yeah. And even, not being funny, I probably don't even want to get involved in that conversation. I've probably got my own views about the whole thing. But all I'm trying to explain is what that did for us. So for my parents now, coming through Jamaica and seeing all the injustices they've seen in living in that paradise type island, but they left for a better life, you can imagine. They've got to the UK, they're facing disadvantage again with housing and all of that. But my parents, my mum in particular, one thing she put in all of us, she said, look, education, you guys got to try twice as hard. She didn't want us running up and down. She wouldn't let us put dreadlocks in our hair or anything like that. She wanted us to really to do our best, focus on education and that's what she focused on.
Yeah.
I've got 5 brothers and sisters and everyone's done really well.
Yeah.
I'm so blessed to my mum. And that's the thing. And so even though we go back to where everything began and the colour often comes into the conversation, it's not the thing that we want to hang everything on because everything's got to move on. And funny enough, I don't want to jump too far forward, but me coming here and seeing the First Nation people and what they're going through as black fellas, fully understand it because I've seen it, been through it. And even them, the leaders, many of the leaders don't want it to come down to colour. They want supporters in the community. And it's a community thing that's going to change what's going on. All people supporting each other. And so, things do come back to race and the conquerors and all that, but ultimately don't want to hang on that because not everyone's the same who comes from that culture.
Right. And so our family has migrated, we've reunited, and we're in London in the 80s and 90s, feeling like we're on the margins. What is that environment like and what did it produce?
Well, I was young, but all I remember is in Hackney particularly, there were big houses, they had basements and that, but people had music. Music was a big thing.
Yeah.
Music was the thing that really helped us with our empowerment and drive and just developing communities. So often Caribbean people had parties. You'd have a little mini sound system or speakers in the corner, they'd play music and come together and dance and just have fun and do all of that.
And this is in lounge rooms, in basements?
Totally.
Right.
Then sound systems, the idea of what a sound system is, it's a mobile PA, high-powered PA. High power today might be 10 to 20,000 watts. Back then it could be 200 to 300 watts because it's all valve technology.
Okay, right, yeah.
But still, they built these high-powered systems and played music communally. Okay, chicken and egg. Reggae would probably have come first, so you had the music. So again, in Jamaica, there was racism. So black people, you're no longer a slave. But you couldn't go to the uptown clubs unless you had a certain look or complexion.
In Jamaica itself?
In Jamaica.
Right.
Hardcore racism.
Yeah.
And so reggae seemed to come from that. We just complained about what we were going through, which is, or gave it social commentary to what we were going through.
Yeah.
And then made this music, reggae, ultimately, which, Toots and the Maytals, he coined the phrase reggae. Ultimately, reggae is an offbeat music. You've got 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. But reggae's on the third. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And doing that almost sounds like some kind of waltzing, but that's reggae's the third. Where dance music is 1 and 3. Disarray is
Right,
one
yeah,
of three. So reggae
yeah.
is just the offbeat music. That's really what it is. It's a wide term. Not everyone, even myself, it's such a wide genre. I was going to say it's almost impossible to be into all of it. It's too big.
Yeah.
At one time in Jamaica were pressing and releasing the most vinyl records out of any country in the whole world. They were so prolific in what they were releasing.
The cultural exponents and exports from that island nation just continues to astound me. Like I just
Well, and from that, and from speaking on records, toasting what people called it, speaking on versions, talking about what they were going through, people moving around the world, it influenced other music genres as well,
Right.
I would suggest.
right. We've got some vinyl with us today. Have we got a tune that makes me think of that period, the 70s, 80s, the sort of
Yeah, I probably can.
seminal days and the kind of tunes that you might have grown up on?
In fact, yeah, I'm going to play an artist here, Gregory Isaacs. He's passed away now, but one of our foundation artists who's making reggae, lived a difficult life. And you can imagine, to be an artist back then, people weren't really getting paid lots and lots of money.
Right.
You had to be hardcore. You probably had to find other ways to sustain your income, your living. Nowadays, artists like this, and probably even back then, they'll make a lot of dub plates. Wherever they travel, people would want specials music from them.
Yeah.
And therefore,
Can you give us the definition of dub plates there?
a dub plate is a unique song that a sound system can play that no one else can play. That was really the idea
exclusive.
of it, an exclusive.
Right.
Now it's a bit more, I'd say watered down, because what an artist will do, they'll have a hit song and they'll just go around and they'll change one word to say that sound's name.
Ah, okay.
But it's the same song that they've already made.
Right,
But a
right.
dub plate back in the day, a person would be singing about that sound system. Some people call it a special as well.
Okay.
And a dub plate, because we're talking about records, vinyl records, a dub plate would be cut as a one-off record on acetate.
And given physically only to that sound.
Absolutely,
Sounds.
absolutely.
Wow. Right.
So this record here I'm going to play is by Gregory Isaac. Probably came out late 70s, I believe. Just a classic Gregory Isaac song. As I say, social commentary. So we're not having to dress it up or to make people feel like they haven't got things or to feel inferior. This is all about being real, I would call it. So this is what was going on probably in Jamaica back in the late 70s.
A rich man heaven is a poor man's hell. So many years I've been slaving in your factory. Ooh-wee. Never had a chance to talk with the boss, yeah. And for so long I've been living in this old community, yeah, where no one knew my pain, yet I've paid the cost. No one knew my pain, Lord, yet I've paid the cost. But I would rather to live poor and clean than to live rich in corruption. I said that I've got to live clean. Cause Jah, I got cast down in judgment. Said I wanna be clean. Can't you see what I mean?
That's Gregory Isaac Pour and Clean on the African Museum label, which was Gregory's own label that he put together. And again, that was part of it. Again, in fact, when I first moved to Australia, I started championing sound very quickly. I don't want to jump forward too quick, but part of what we love to do is to work with First Nation people. I'm very passionate about that. Again, as I said about the story of my own story, or black people in the from the Caribbean going to the UK, and how we felt, and coming here and knowing minimal about what was happening. I just wanted to meet First Nation people, and I went to Musgrave Park, and I was introduced to a lot of creative Indigenous First Nation people. I'm very much jumping ahead now. I'm going to only touch on it. And I had to put together a group of arts workers and go to Cape York to work in remote communities using creativity to help people. But I met some First Nation people, Paulie Spear, one in particular, and DK, another one in particular, Aboriginal men, powerful people, very community focused. And we started another company called Murray Vibration, where we wanted to help Murray fellas. And we were doing activities and different things. But one thing Paulie said to me back then, he said, Chris, he goes, I've never really met a rich black fella. And it's that whole thing about having role models or things to aspire to and feeling that you can achieve. Because if you don't know anyone in those positions, it's hard for you to imagine that you can get there yourself.
Right.
He's a very motivated young man.
Yeah.
And it just made me think, and that's the whole point about all of this. So going back to Gregory and having a record label and being an artist and being empowered, it was through music. There were very few chances available or opportunities available for black people in the Caribbean.
Right.
They did develop, and things are much different now.
Yeah.
But to be empowered and to be independent, apart from your own creativity, so that really plants a seed with me to say what creativity really means. Because now that process, years later, was coined as the creative industries. But that was before the creative industries was really known about. People were doing it already.
Right.
They were being creative, they were developing product, they were selling it, they were developing income. They were having events. The sound systems were made, they were putting on events in the community, not in the uptown places,
Right.
because we weren't allowed to go there.
Yeah.
In our own community, you can have a bar, you can have food,
Yeah.
you can have commerce built around that.
So there was enterprise and economy built
Totally
in.
built around your creativity.
Right.
And that's the power of the creative industries, which is a phrase I'm going to use more and more
Yeah.
during our conversation.
Right.
Because that's ultimately what it is, and it's empowering because you develop intellectual property which you can exploit, and therefore you can move forward and do and empower yourself.
Right, right. Because, I don't know, I feel funny referring to Jamaica as a brand, but do you think, like, as a country that's exporting music and culture and art, do you think that's something that Jamaican cultural identity was aware, they were kind of aware of their own identity and value?
I know what you just said, you find it hard to think or speak about Jamaica as a brand, but ultimately that's what it did.
Right.
Reggae music, red, gold and green, well, that's a different thing, that's more of a religious thing, but the flag, the Jamaican flag, and and even the colours, Rasta, and what that might have meant came out of Jamaica. And it is like branding. Love, peace and unity. It sounds a bit kind of trite in a way, but it's not. It's, for people to say that, in music nowadays, you don't often get that, where people talk about love, peace and unity. Those are important kind of sentiments, and not even sentiments, things that we need, ultimately.
Right. And so this tune was reflecting on the 80s and talking about kind of the different world back then of like what it took to record, produce and publish, get your music out there. What followed that period? How long were you living in the UK, and like what brought you?
Okay, so I was growing up then. So when I first started my first sound system, when I was at school, I started a band. I'll tell you my story. I started a band, me and my mates at school. We started a reggae band. So we went to school in Ilford. Back then, Ilford was predominantly, it wasn't like Hackney. So we moved from Hackney out to Ilford when I was 11. Ilford was not so diverse, and therefore when I went to school, there weren't many black people there.
Yeah.
Not that that's how you live your life, looking for black people, but the fact is, back then there was National Front. National Front was a far right-wing organisation.
Right.
You could be walking down the road, they would shout at the N-word at you, throw some stones at you. You had skinheads that might want to fight you. If you're just out on the street there, and skinheads look brutal, they had their shaven heads and
Right.
and big bobber boots. And
Wow.
you never...
And did you have a bit of commute to go into your school, or were you living in the neighbouring?
No, my school was 10 minutes away from
Okay.
where I lived. So that wasn't, all I'm saying is, a young person growing up, you could be exposed to anything
Right.
in a way. It wasn't safe per
Yeah,
se.
yeah.
So
I feel like it was almost like frontier, like, because now I look at London and UK, particularly from a South Asian lens of like, wow, they've really got big South Asian communities, big multicultural communities, and the scale and history there has allowed those communities to have a strong sense of their British and Jamaican, British and Indian identities. But from what you're describing, just a few short decades ago, it was almost like it was frontier multiculturalism.
absolutely, because my parents were the first, and I myself and my generation were the first generation of black people born, or
That's
Afro-Caribbean people born in the UK.
Yeah.
And so it was totally new. So going to my school in Ilford now, where there weren't many black people, just a handful, you had to literally fight to be strong, because you could get picked on. And I think that's where we got our, in quotes, fighting spirit from, because you're either going to stand up for yourself or you're going to lay down. And not that we're out looking, no one's looking for trouble.
No.
But either you're going to become a victim or you're going to try to say, no, don't.
Right.
And again, I would suggest in our music, you hear a lot of empowerment and resistance, and people say, no, I'm not going to take that. I'm proud of who I am, and I'm going to try to stamp my identity and express myself. And that's all, again, going back to the creative industries, why I love it so much. It gives people a voice to talk about their perspective on life, ultimately.
Right. And so the Jamaican music culture, the sound system culture, it's transplanted from the Caribbean, tropical island nations, brought to like when I visited London, I was like looking around going, whoa, I feel like I've come to the center of the empire. Like growing up in Australia, being from Sri Lanka, and also having visited India at the time. And then I visited the UK for the first time. I was like, wow, this is where they've been taking all the riches. This is where they've been extracting and mining our wealth and culture for so long. And like, I felt like almost like a Star Wars movie or something. I was just riding around the place on a bicycle, just going, wow, look at this place. And so how did the music culture, it's on the margins, it's in the midst of frontier multiculturalism, you're facing institutionalized racism. What kind of sound system culture and music culture emerged from that period? Like you mentioned resistance. Yeah.
Well, so my first foray into all of it was through a band. I was at school in my final year, which would be grade 12 over here.
Yeah.
And my mates and I, we wanted to start a band. We had started a reggae band, and we did gigs in our local area. We put on events, university gigs, just a fledgling little band, but we enjoyed it. Rehearsed once a week and, developed friendship through that. And my friend John Hunt, who now lives in Barbados, he had the idea of starting a sound system. And so therefore, there were 13 of us ultimately. We all started the sound. Everyone in the sound had a different job. You had selectors, people that just played music. You had MCs. You had operator, people that would operate the equipment, control the equipment.
Right.
You had box boys, people that would just be around to lift the boxes. We put on our events. You had a doorman. Again, enterprise. We would earn money from that and buy more records and build a bigger sound,
Right.
And develop community. So in Ilford, there were 2 or 3 sounds. There was us and Styling Media. There was one more, whose name I forget right now, but there were 3 sounds in Ilford alone. In London, I think you've got 32 suburbs in London. There would be hundreds of sounds at that time back then. It was a thing that was common that we all did. We all had a group of friends, you all built a sound, and then you could clash even, so you could play together.
Yeah.
That's a big thing in reggae music.
Yeah.
They call it clashing. It sounds, wow, what's going on here? But it's competition between sound systems to say which one's the best sound, who's playing the best music, the latest music,
Yeah.
who can entertain the crowd the best, who's got the best MCs. So there's always that kind of side. There has been always in sound system.
And
culture.
how is it something like the Meanjin Reggae Festival in terms of the spacing for a sound clash, or is it quite close together? And is there a sort of a rule book at all in terms of like, do we take turns?
Well, yeah, so a real clash would be sound head to head in a smaller space, taking turns, maybe agreeing in the beginning, half hour. First of all, you play half hour of music,
Okay.
do what you can, half hour. And as the night goes on, that time would go down 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and then eventually it would be 1-to-1.
Right.
So each sound would play one song each and see who gets the best response from the crowd, yeah.
Right. And are we even entering the dance halls at this stage, or are we still in lounge rooms, basements, and street corners?
Dance halls and clubs, yeah, ultimately, yeah,
Okay.
for that.
In
And
early 90s period, or?
absolutely,
Yeah.
especially in Jamaica. In Jamaica, we was watching Jamaica, and that what was going on in Jamaica. You had sounds clashing, these major sounds, King Jammies, Stereograph, you could just go on, Stone Love, so many sounds in Jamaica,
Right.
everyone clashing, and then other sounds coming out of like America, King Addis, or out of the UK, King Earthquake, or Love Injection, or I should say Saxon Sound System, one of the biggest sound systems that even came out of England.
Right.
Coxon. So you had all these sounds. Not everyone would want to clash. On my own sound, Maccabee, we weren't really into clashing. Some sounds just want to entertain, or they want to play lovers music where people romance in the dance. So there's all this range of what the music was doing, but ultimately it was bringing people together.
Right.
Because in those events, then you'd meet all kind of people. We all got to know each other,
Right.
and that's how it all grew.
I know you brought just a tiny slice of your vinyl collection with you today, but do you have a piece that might speak to that time period, or some of the sound systems or spirit of resistance that we've just been talking about?
Not fully, because with a lot of those records there, that is what I would call dancehall. So dancehall is what it says. It's made well, it gets a bit complicated in a way, because as much as I said reggae music is on the third beat, and that is traditional reggae,
Right.
dancehall has evolved right now to almost EDM ultimately.
Yeah, does it have like more of that four on the floor
Yeah.
kind of pattern?
So it's evolved now.
but
Dancehall.
still with the offbeat skank.
It can be in there if you look for it on the bass line, but
Uh-huh.
ultimately it can go anywhere now. I think
Right.
as things evolve, it's really developing. And in truth, there's room for everybody. I myself now, I'm not so much into dancehall music.
Okay.
Again, they speak about their own contemporary issues, and I'm not into any music which is demeaning,
Derogatory or
derogatory
Yeah.
to anyone else. I see music as being important for it to be uplifting and positive, and I don't want to generalize. It's not fair to generalize, but there's music now called drill music. I'm an older person, and it's the thing. So music's often contemporary, aimed for a different audience. I fully get that.
yeah,
But when I hear music and they talk about killing people, it really puts me off. And
Yeah.
I try to avoid that. We do events. We engage with people. And my job now, I'm trying to give people opportunity to express themselves. I'm going out into community, and that's a challenge I'm having to begin to face. In that if you say to a young person, hey man, there's a stage there, you can make a song, you can get up there, you can do something.
Yeah.
And their expression is one that I might not agree with. Where do I stand with that? And so
Yeah.
still trying to work with it.
yeah.
through that.
That's really interesting, because like in our efforts to create spaces and platforms for people to emerge, it is important to ask that question, like, to what degree do we play the gatekeeper that we were battling against when we were growing up, sort of thing, like.
Absolutely, but then I'll give the example of Bob Marley, a bit cliche, but I do. But one of the most, he had the most to say. He had a lot of passion about what he, from the ghettos of Jamaica, he's been through everything there, literally, and through his creativity, what it did.
Yeah.
Angry, in quotes, young man, but still, he didn't use bad language. He didn't directly say, we've got to go out and kill anyone or
That's
do
right.
anything like that.
That's right.
He did it, he used it, expressed himself in a positive way.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's still what we're chasing down to try, because as I went back to in the beginning, it's not about them and us directly.
Yeah.
It's about trying to bring people together and find common ground, really.
And I find it really hard to think of another more truly globally, multi-generationally celebrated star than Bob Marley, because like certainly from the island nation of Sri Lanka, worshipped, it's to this day you'll see artwork on the back of three-wheeler trishaws and just around the world, particularly I guess from that island nation connection from Sri Lanka to the Caribbean. It seems to really speak to people generation after generation, and it's just this legendary godlike status. And then, like you say, like he built that off of positivity and spreading love and peace and this sort of lasting message.
Speaking about reality, touching on the messages of the Bible as well, which comes into it. And as you say, it relates to so many different people. In fact, coming here to Australia, then I realised, I heard that there'd been many of the communities really enjoy reggae music, basically.
Yeah.
So I started to go to remote communities, and they were telling me about Lucky Dube coming here. I was in Cairns. I'd never heard of it. I must admit.
Right.
I'd never heard of Lucky Dube. Even
Right.
much as I'm into reggae, I didn't know about him.
Yeah.
Until I got here, and they'd been to communities.
That's right.
Peter Tosh, I believe, when he came here and performed, he wanted a reggae indigenous band to perform with him.
Yes.
And I believe Mop and the Dropouts was that. I believe it was not Mop and the Dropouts. I got that totally wrong. But Willoughby and Bart Willoughby and his band, No Fixed Address, I believe is the band. I believe it is them who performed with Peter Tosh.
Right. Okay. And did I take us away from this tune that we were about to?
Well, you're
go
asking me
into
to play
here?
a song which kind of represented that period of time and what we were going through. So this is the whole point. So we were underground. Yes, there was lots of dancehall coming out, which was more contemporary. But this is just a classic song, really just celebrating what we love, really, and how simple and yet how effective reggae can be, ultimately. So this is by Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson is quite a well-known singer from this period of time, but he made some classic songs, and this is just singing about reggae music.
Strictly reggae music. You cannot refuse it. Strictly reggae music. You cannot refuse it. Strictly reggae music. Strictly reggae music we a play. Strictly reggae music we a play. Strictly roots rock reggae. Strictly roots rock reggae. We play it on the radio. We play it on the disco. We play it on the stereo. We play it on the TV show. Strictly reggae music. You cannot refuse it. Strictly reggae music. You cannot refuse it. Okay now. Strictly roots rock reggae. Strictly roots rock reggae. We play it every night and day. We play it every night and day. We write it in a Jamaica. We make it in a Jamaica. We send it to a England. Them stack it in a England. We send it to America. Them rock it in America. We send it to a Canada. Them rock it in a Canada. We send it to a Africa. Them dance it in a Africa. Strictly reggae music. You cannot refuse it. Strictly rubber dub. That's how we love. Oh yeah now. Strictly rubber dub, where we love. Strictly rubber dub, where we love. Strictly roots rock reggae. Strictly rubber dub, where we want. Strictly rubber dub. That's how where we love. Strictly rubber dub. That's how where we want. Oh yeah now. Strictly rubber dub, we a play. We play it in a Jackaman style. We play it in a Johnson style. Strictly rubber dub, we a play. Strictly rubber dub.
And again, that was just a classic reggae track, Strictly Rubber Dub by Anthony Johnson, which kind of, for me, reminds me and represents what we were going through back then, promoting what we're doing, promoting what we love, being proud of who we are now, shouting it out loud, you know, Strictly Reggae, yes, we're underground, but we love what we're doing,
Right.
and developing a scene,
Right.
ultimately.
Right. So, 1994, Champion Sound, your first record.
Yes.
Tell me about this.
So, I was, as I said, I was 1994, yeah, I was 29 maybe, anyway, around that age.
Yeah. So you've been you've been in a few bands for a few years.
Well, one band,
One
it was the Sound System. After that, Maccabee Sound, I was in the Sound System, pushing
Yeah.
that for a long time.
Okay.
Having to move the equipment around and to do all of that, it didn't seem sustainable for me at that point in time.
Did you mention what you were playing in the band? Which instrument?
I was a drummer.
You're a drummer.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah, I
same.
know, that's why I looked at your drum kit there. So I was the drummer in the band. Wasn't a natural drummer, especially drumming to reggae. I had to learn the principles as much as I've just said what reggae is.
Yeah.
Probably back then when I was started the band, I was more into jazz funk. Jazz funk was my thing
Okay.
back in the day.
Right.
You played a George Benson song there, and
Yeah.
on there there's some classic songs. Back in the day, I was into jazz funk. People were dancing, people were letting loose.
Yeah. I got reunited with my Jaco Pastorius. I mean, that's not quite in the jazz funk, but he does sort of touch on that.
But jazz funk was a genre, and it was exciting at that time. People used to dance, have fun, and that's what it was kind of about. I was into that. But with the band, we just wanted a reggae band, and so we started this band called Ecstasy back then. Then after that, as I said, many people moved away or dwindled and did different things. And I thought, well, let me get into music production. I always wanted to make a record. I go back to David Dubwise now, who I touched on. So I met my mate David. I met him already, and he's from South Africa, David. And this is where, for me, it got really exciting in many ways, because I just had a drive to make music. I just wanted to make music. I met this guy who's basically a white South African guy. But when I met him, I went to his house. He had the biggest reggae collection of music I'd ever seen in my whole life. And
Okay.
I was a record collector myself.
That
But
sounds
as a
serious.
DJ, with this guy, what he had. And so back then, even
This is in the UK.
in the UK, yeah.
Okay.
And so back then, even as I talk about reggae is not one thing. So you have contemporary reggae, the dancehall guys that I touched on,
Yeah.
which is what most people would have been listening to because it's for young people coming up, is contemporary. But then you've got roots reggae. You've got people like Jazz Shaka, Entebbe. You had old sounds that had been around from the 70s playing roots. In fact, mainly driven by Jah Rastafari for them. So for them it was Rasta, dreadlocks, Haile Selassie. That's the principle of it, and that's what a lot of the sounds appear to follow. I myself do not. And most of the music you will hear people talk about Jah. And it's really in relation to the Bible. They're talking about that whole principle. Many people believe that Haile Selassie, they've got a belief in Haile Selassie as being the second coming, I believe, of Jesus Christ. And they get that from the Bible. But on reggae, a lot of people would sing about that in reggae. And so, yeah, even though I'm not into that so much, I was very much moved by that whole story. I still am right now. The message in the music is one of upliftment and love, peace and unity, and trying to overcome adversity. So that's ultimately what roots music is about, and it's where I'm more focused on now. Even though I will play contemporary music, and I like it all, a lot of it. It's got to be uplifting and touching on things of importance generally for me.
Right. And then, so from the period in bands, it was jazz funk, and then it was learning the basics of reggae rhythms. And Champion Sound is a name and a concept that's been in your life for a long time. What was the first iteration?
So that word champion sound, it's a common expression in reggae. I'm the champion sound, or we've got the champion sound, or this is the champion sound. Everyone can relate to it like that.
Okay. And it's been track names, album names.
Not really. It's not really a name. There'd be an MC somewhere who would have said champion sound. It's more a thing a person would say.
Okay.
This is the champion sound. It was never a song.
Okay.
Well, there have been songs now called
Yeah.
champion sound, but really it's just a phrase that people would use in reggae.
For like a legendary sound system.
Yeah,
Something that's sounding really.
We're the champion sound. This is the champion sound. So there's many
Oh,
records.
like the winner of the Sound Clash, that kind of.
Even no matter who you are, I'm
Yeah.
the champion sound. You see what I mean? Because you're always going to big yourself up.
Okay.
You're always going to want to promote yourself in the highest level.
Okay.
We're the best sound. Nobody can test us. So champion sound is just a phrase. And in
Okay.
fact, so I wanted to make a record, and back in '94 and previous, there was jungle music. So jungle music, this is where things change. So living in London, London's a great place. It's full of energy, and people being creative, people want to try different things, different music types. And ultimately, and I can't say properly how it started, I would be unable to say, but I know there was a lot of people in sound systems, like I can name like Unity Sound. You had Demon Rocker and Flinty Badman in Unity Sound System. Unity Sound System is one of the biggest sounds in London, dancehall sounds. And they got a lot of their music from Jamaica, from a record label and sound system called King Jammy, so a major sound. So in London, broadly, you had Saxon, you had Unity, North and South sound systems. You had other sounds too, but they were like the biggest international almost type sounds. I might be unfair to other people, but they were the two major ones, say, which I was focused on. Anyway, so
And when we say international, we're talking in the sense like world class or literally touring.
they would literally tour.
Wow.
So they would go to America and clash. They would go to Jamaica and clash. Actually, Unity, I don't believe, went to Jamaica and clash, but Saxon Sound did. They were the first British sound to go to Jamaica.
Right. And this would
clash.
be like a big logistical operation of like sea freight, putting all those bass bins on the cargo ship.
It did for Saxon. They actually took their sound system there. Most people wouldn't do that now. But in Europe, people do. In Europe, people still will take the sound
It's a
on
bit
a
of a
ferry
simpler
and get
exercise.
around. Yeah. And but early 90s. And this is the thing about reggae. Not many people made a lot of money from reggae, even though you opened them up to opportunities. Broadly speaking, people wasn't making a lot. And then you had this dance music come back, acid house music, and then jungle started, and even four to the floor type of music was coming around at that time, and people appeared to be making much more money. In fact, my mate, so as a DJ, I remember back then, I would have my speakers and my records I had to buy to do my events and everything like that. I might do an event and get £50.
Right.
I would have spent more than that on the records that day.
So that's turning up with the sounds,
Yeah,
playing the music,
yeah,
getting it there, getting it back for £50.
pretty much, yeah.
Right.
And then all this dance music started. My mate would have like of house music and stuff like that, and that kind of.
This is
jungle
later
music.
into the 90s, is it?
Early 90s again. Well, mid 90s, more of that, but early 90s it was all happening. The jungle DJs and that weren't really making sounds. They were playing off of PAs at underground events. So a promoter would hire a venue.
And a commercially produced sound system. Is that what I'm hearing?
They might hire one. I would believe they would hire a sound from someone well known, or maybe even commercial. These junglist guys, a big hall they'd hire, or a big venue, and DJs would come with a box of records and play a set for an hour or two. But you'd only carry your records. But those guys could get paid like $1,000 a set,
Right.
or £1,000 it would be back then, but big money.
Yeah.
Beyond what we would know about as a reggae. So many reggae artists at that time actually looked at that and thought, well, we're not making any money. Look at these guys making money.
Yeah.
So you had a whole transition of artists moving from reggae to jungle in particular, especially when this new genre started. So I was talking about Demon Rock and Flinty. They actually made a record saying reggae owes us money. As they started a label called Shut Up and Dance, and they started making some great songs actually. But that's what was happening. People being creative, and it was all it's all new.
Yeah.
And some people stuck to what they knew. Some people wanted to transition. So even though I was loving it all really, but even though I was into reggae, I wanted to make a record because technology was happening. Samplers had come out. So back then, the Akai sampler, the S1000, would have been a staple one, affordable by people. And I had a friend called Devious D. He was a jungle DJ. He used to DJ jungle at various events major jungle events, and I said to mate, I want to make a record. He said, yeah, I can take it to a studio. So there was a studio which had a commercial hit
Yeah.
with a record called Walk and Skank, I believe it was, and where that record was made, he took me there, and I produced one side of this 45. I found a bunch of samples of my old reggae songs that I liked. I built the backing track broadly. I played the bass line, sampled a jungle breakbeat, and made this song. But I just wanted to, this was my first record, and it's called Champion Sound because, well, you'll hear why it's called Champion Sound. And this was my first record, which was made in 1994.
Champion sound.
You want to make a jump and sound is no threat to the champion sound. You want to make a jump and sound is no threat to the champion sound. You want to make a jump and sound is no threat to the champion sound. You want to make a jump and sound is no threat to the champion sound.
Usually the die for your weekly session and this your gargan sound in ya. Usually the die for your weekly session and this your gargan sound in ya. Hang up!
Oh. Oh no. My dancing has kicked the table. Look out.
Yeah, and so that was pretty much my first incursion into being a producer, and it just opened new doors. That record did quite well for us, for Dubwise Productions, which is the name of the label,
Yeah.
for Dave and I. He got Dave out there, so I was the producer. Dave was able to go to record stores around London, make contacts, and sell the records. Of course, we had to sell units. We had a bad experience with a distributor. It was a bit... it wasn't, you could imagine, it was, well, you call it frontier, it was all frontier. Young people making music, distribution was key, so you had to try to get this into the record shops.
Yeah.
And a distributor may not always be a good distributor, so we had our fair share of experiences in experiencing not very good distributors.
And I imagine there's a minimum order on the number of vinyls to produce?
Well, and you want to make money as well, so 1,000 records back then would be nice to sell, to be able to recoup your costs and make another record.
What was the minimum pressing around that time?
There really isn't any.
Oh, right.
And in fact,
I was scalable then.
yeah, you want to make money. So back then, in the early 90s, a hit record, jungle record even, could sell 15,000 units. Guys were actually buying cars from the music they were making.
Right.
We probably sold, that record did well for me. Over 1,000 of this one, maybe even 1,500. That, for me, that's a good seller. It got
Right.
me in the door.
Yeah.
And in fact, it got played quite widely. Even to now, it's still a record. Because again, with record, there's collectability. And so people that like music
Yeah.
will collect. And you can even resell a record years and years later on.
What does that feel like to be both a vinyl, both a vinyl collector and having created your own vinyl? Does it feel like you have like other children out there in the world, and you cross paths with them? Like, do you find this record out there in the world? Do people find you and go, "Oh, you're the guy"?
Oh, no, totally. Because people know, and again, that's not my driver. That's not my driver to want that. But yeah, it's a reality. I had a call just the other day from New Zealand. A guy said, your song's just been played in New Zealand by Channel One Sound, who's in New Zealand.
Right.
Have I still got copies? And I'm thinking, wow, you know. So yeah,
And do you still
humbling.
have copies of this?
I've only got a few, actually. No, not really. A few white labels. So what happens when you make a record? You get a white label first. So that's like a pre-release record.
Is that the test pressing or
Like
it's separate?
No, same as the test
Okay,
pressing. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
right.
So I've got a few test pressings, maybe.
All right.
I've even, my mate Dave might have a couple, but no, not. We won't repress it. We've repressed it once, but I won't do it again. Yeah.
Right. Because there's a certain kind of, I don't know, this sacred thing of like, I've created this piece. Like if I contrast it to digital, where you make it once and there's no limit to the amount of times it can be streamed, played, downloaded, that sort of thing. But when we're talking analog vinyl, there's a certain preciousness and certain impermanence of creating something that's physical, right?
Well, yes and no. What it is now, especially with the reggae vinyl industry, represses of records is really, really critical. Because I mentioned about Jamaica making so many records. At one time, they were the most prolific producer of vinyl records in the world. That island of 2.5 million people releasing more vinyl than any other country.
Yeah.
Reggae, most of these tunes I've never heard. So what it is, there's collectors or there's people out there that say, wow, this tune here only sold or pressed 300, 500 copies. Therefore, the repress industry now is very big for reggae. If you're going to get those tunes which you never are going to be able to get, it's not. If you actually want a record, you're only going to get it on repress, or it's going to be a majorly expensive record, which is unaffordable for most people.
Right. And then the value or the resale value is also highly connected to whether it was part of the original pressing or the repressing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A repressed record is going to be standard when it comes out. $20 or whatever. The original record could have been $200, $300, $400, $500 because it was so rare.
Do collectors have any resentment of like when you get the original one? Do you have this expectation that like, oh, maybe it won't get repressed?
I think many of them would do.
Yeah.
But at the same, especially if you just bought it for a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm not into collectibles. I buy music to play.
Yeah.
So I don't actually have that view on music. Anything I buy is to play. I don't buy a record just because it's going to be valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
I have so mto questions about how production even happens in 1994, but I do want to try and fit this into an initial chat. I'm sure we're going to have you back on here and go into further stories here because there's so much history and stories between your ears. But I want to talk about, so Champion Sound started as this record, and it evolved to being a sound system located here in Meanjin, Brisbane. Can you tell me about that journey? So your journey to Australia.
Yeah, so I just continued making records. In fact, from that record I've just played, I made another jungle record. Then I made my first reggae record called Babylon Pressure. I've not got it with me, unfortunately. I should have bought it thinking about it. I made my first reggae record because, again, remember my passion's reggae.
Yeah.
I just made this jungle record just to make a record. It seemed easy. I didn't have to have any artists. I could sample records. I was in the studio. I'm a producer. I'm creative.
Yeah. I
made a beat. I made a record. Can you see how urban and how underground that is?
Yeah.
And what that did. Whereas before that, I'd have had to have known a singer. And I said to the singer, hey, can you make up a song? Here's the beat. Let's make it
Right.
up. Let's go to the studio. Let's
Right.
produce it.
Yeah.
Whereas this way, I went to the studio one day and came out with a production. So it was really making it easy, accessible to make music. So I like that whole jungle thing. But then what happened, I'll be honest with you, what happened was it changed. You had, everything's cultural. So with jungle, you had people then saying, we don't like those reggae samples in those reggae, we don't even understand what they're saying. And I don't want to be controversial, but it felt to me, it was mainly the white producers or white people were saying, what's all that? We don't even know that. No,
Right.
We don't, in fact, we don't even like that, they're saying. But that's how jungle started.
Yeah.
Jungle in the beginning, we used reggae influences to the fullest extent, the
Right.
bass lines in particular.
Right.
And that's what it was all about.
Yeah.
And then, but later on, people, while I'm going through my own transition, people are saying, no, we don't want, not to me personally, but I'm
Yeah.
hearing it in the industry.
Yeah.
And in fact, they said, we're going to make intelligent drum and bass. Anyone can research that. That phrase came out. They called it intelligent drum and bass. And that was enough for me because I thought, well, hang on a minute, you guys have lost it. You've got no idea what this is all about from
That's
my
a
perspective.
very loaded term, isn't
Totally.
it? Yeah.
It hit me hard
Yeah.
personally. And I thought, I'm not getting involved. It's a young man's game anyway.
Yeah.
And since I love reggae, I might as well do what I enjoy doing.
Right.
And I started producing reggae tracks. I made Babylon Pressure. In the UK, there was a DJ on Radio 1 called John Peel, and there was Andy Kershaw. There were two. They both played reggae on Radio 1.
Right.
Or within their playlist, they would play reggae. Not that they were dedicated reggae DJs.
Okay. And to reference your last comment, can I touch on their cultural heritage of these two
They-
DJs?
Radio 1, back then everyone was white.
Okay.
Broadly, I would
Okay,
say.
okay.
And so they were white. But what it is, they played my first reggae record.
Right. Did they feel more allied to the culture and respectful of the roots than what you were describing about the white jungle producers there, like trying to whitewash things?
Yeah, no.
These radio DJs.
Andy Kershaw and John Peel. John Peel just had a wide view of music. I wasn't into him, don't get me wrong. And I didn't really listen to Radio 1. But if your song got played on Radio 1, that was the biggest radio station in the UK. And in fact, back then, you had pirate radio stations.
Right.
So Kiss FM in London and was
Is that where Kiss, like the Kiss of today, did it come from?
in London was a pirate radio station,
Wow.
and there's history there again because they got a license, many people didn't. But so if you
Okay.
wanted to hear music like I've just played or your own music,
Yeah.
you were looking at pirate radio stations,
Right.
and that was literally underground. So you can see how underground,
Yeah.
it all was or all is. So so my first reggae song that I made, though, fortunately, got played on Radio 1. Shaka Sound System played it. It hit quite hard.
Yeah.
Instrumental track called
Right.
Babylon Pressure.
Right.
And that just made me realise, well, really, I don't need to worry about jungle. Just do what you love.
Yeah.
And since then, I've only produced reggae records.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you also had you played your hand at being a commercial producer, and you sort of got one from one on this one. You said you sold 1,500 records, and you smashed it out of the park.
Yeah, and made another one actually called Jungle is Soldier
Okay.
again. And so this was 94, then in 95 I made another one, another
Yeah.
jungle record.
Yeah.
But that was the transition, and Intelligent Drum and Bass came out, and I'm thinking, well, do I even want to get involved in this, you know? I don't need, well, who needs that? When you're creative, it's hard. What is it hard? I was going to say it's hard to get feedback, and I don't mean it like that. Everyone's got an opinion
Yeah.
about everything. But
Like helpful, constructive, considerate feedback.
that's kind of like what I think. But imagine it, I don't know how to explain it. If you make a song that no one's heard before, how do you know if it's any good?
Right. Yeah.
Or
If
what-
you're presenting something entirely new and it doesn't have a reference point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do you know what makes a good song? And that's the point. So
And will it be only considered good in hindsight? When people look back and go, wow, that was advanced for its
Well-
time, but we weren't ready for it.
I'm not even at that level because,
Yeah.
like I'm trying to say, every record you bring out costs you, say, £1,000 plus. You've made a capital investment in that record.
Right.
So if you're not able to sell it, you've lost a lot of money. So part of your mind is thinking, is it commercial? Can I get my money back on that record? Because I want to make more records. And so you're in that position, really. But fortunately, all my initial records sold. I was able to make more. I've made over 24, 25 individual releases, a couple of albums. I don't put any money into it. It makes money enough for me to reinvest. I don't take any. Well, I take a bit of money from it now over the years, but I don't really do it for money. I do it because I just want to make music.
Right. Okay. And then what brought the move to Australia?
So I met my missus, and we started to come to Australia. By that stage, I am early 40s. Met Liz, my missus, and started coming on holiday. You know, experiencing Australia, a new world. You can imagine being 40, thinking, what's your life going to be like in the future? I mean, I'm happy in England. I'm not going to knock England at all. Beautiful place, lots of energy.
Yeah.
I had a great job and everything, but I just wanted a different life. And we was expecting our first child to come to Australia.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, this is not a bad place to bring up kids.
Yeah.
So I moved here in 2006 and wasn't sure what I'm going to do. In the UK, I used to work for the government. I was a government employee. I used to do health and safety. I did quality control. I was a surveyor. I had that kind of life.
Okay.
Come to Australia, everything went upside down.
Yeah.
Couldn't get into the industries I was into. And in fact, having young kids, not wanting to. So my missus worked broadly, and I was a house husband, basically, in the beginning.
Yeah.
And which is great, man, to see my kids growing up and all that.
Yeah.
Which is what I was happy to do.
Great flip of gender roles. Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the same time, as well, I met John, my mate in Champion Sound System over here. He's from Yorkshire in the UK.
Yeah.
I was playing at the Rumpus Rooms in the West End. I was DJing in the Rumpus Rooms. I met this guy, John, and we spoke about England and sound systems, and I was lamenting. We was lamenting how living here now we're never going to see a sound again. I've not really properly said how powerful they are. I know I've touched on it. So you've got these annual events like the Notting Hill Carnival in London. It's the biggest street festival based around sound systems and Caribbean culture.
Right.
So in the UK, all around England, you've got these free music events in the community where sounds are in the community, in the park or wherever it is.
Yeah.
Blasting out. You've got markets. You've got all this stuff. You've got people who come together. It's great. I would say, in some ways, the media likes to demonise urban music, but it's not like that. It's very positive, and in fact, it's a way of finding common ground.
Right.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
there are some bad people around in society, and some of them might gravitate to an event. I'm not saying they do or don't, but the essence of all of it is very positive, and positive and beneficial for many people. I'm going to give you a quick story. Since developing Champion Sound and doing what we do, there was a man called Sam Watson, Uncle Sam Watson, an elder Indigenous person. Sam Watson's very well known, was very well known in Brisbane. He's a leader. And what he always used to say to me was, Chris, you've got to bring that sound system to Musgrave Park. We need that. We need to find common ground. We need to find a way so people can come together and we can hear each other's stories. We want people to hear our story. This is Sam talking. And we're not going to get that unless we can find common ground. And that planted the seed in my own head. That's why we're now doing the event at Musgrave Park, and Sam's unfortunately passed away now.
Right.
But the mission still continues totally in terms of...
That was on his invitation and his encouragement.
He was the beginning of it, and now
Yeah.
other members of the community have followed on with that. And so we were very much invited by the community to do that, to try to find common ground and just bring people together. That's the whole thing.
Right. Because this year, and particularly the last few months of this year, has been quite big in the Champion Sound history. We were looking at the third annual Meanjin Reggae Festival, which was I had a great experience. It was a great success from my perspective. Multiple sound systems, lots of people coming out, and to attend a free large scale festival in that park seemed like that would be a vision that would do. Sorry, what was the name of the
Sam Watson?
Yeah, would do Sam Watson's vision.
Absolutely. And to be honest, we still want a bigger presence of the First Nation people to be able to showcase and perform. So we envisage that growing. We're definitely grassroots at an early stage, but we envisage that growing and have a bigger presence for First Nation people and other communities too. Right.
And you recently, I also witnessed, and you recently celebrated the 15th year of running part. Would that be running multiple a year, or how often would that?
So when we say our 15th anniversary, what that means is, so the sound system was built in 2008, 2007, late 2007 was when
Okay.
we got that sound. Our very first event that we did
Right.
was at that hall in Musgrave Park.
Okay. Yeah.
As I said, so when I wanted to make a connection to the community, my friend John and I, we walked up to Musgrave Park, pretty much knocked on the door, said hello, this is who we are, and can we just make a connection? And First Nation people are always very accommodating and open to having a yarn. I think that's the thing what I love as well about the community,
Yeah.
that everything's real.
Yeah.
The best way of making a relationship is by talking to people and having that real connection. Natalie Alberts, who was the CEO at the time, she was very welcoming and allowed us to have our first event there, which was funded by Brisbane City Council, their Black Diamond unit. We had workshops, music, and it's been a bit tricky since then. We first developed into a commercial, a company, limited
Yeah.
company, and we ran like that for a while. And what happened very quickly, we got picked up by the AFL, the Football Code, who asked us to go to remote far north Queensland.
Okay.
They were called the AFL Cape York, so they had a Cape York division.
Right.
And they wanted us to go to engage with the young people in the communities in far north Queensland. I believe there's 17 or 18 of them. We probably got to about 10 to 12 altogether. And so what I did, I asked Natalie to introduce me to some arts workers, First Nation arts workers, which I mentioned, DK and Paul Desperian.
Yeah.
I had some other friends as well. A guy called Master Wolf Skins. His name was at the time a rapper. He's a white person, not that it matters, but
Yeah.
he's the rapper. My mate Sonny Dread, an African fella, is a MC DJ. And I had a group of about 5 people. We'd fly up to Cairns, we'd get a plane and go to small communities. We'd help them write a song, make up a song, record it on a hip-hop track, which Master Wolf is phenomenal at. And then we'd do an event in the community. We'd play music, and the communities would come together and showcase and watch their young people. And again, what I learned, most of these remote communities, they were based upon people being displaced. They're not real. They're real in terms of they're real, but they were not organically real. They were made through forced movement of people.
Right,
So
right.
at Arakoon, you've got 7 clan groups there.
Yeah.
They don't get on. They're all different.
Right. And there's a strong missionary history as well.
Every community's got a church there, the most pristine building. It's all been about, I would suggest, control. So us doing our events, we were told that when we used to go to Arakoon, and Arakoon, whenever you hear about Arakoon, it's in a negative light about the trouble. But we were told the crime rate would go down, and because the community would come together
Yeah.
to enjoy watching their young people perform.
There you
It
go.
brought people together.
Yeah.
And that continued to be the thing until Campbell Newman came along 2012, I'm not sure when, cut all the funding to that project, and that stopped.
Right.
We did other workshops in other places, but it was difficult to be sustainable, earning money like that. So I got a job in disability support.
Right. Right. Okay. And so prior to that, the business or the sound system enterprise, much like the history that you spoke of back in London, the enterprise was supporting you during that period, but then the funding went, and then now you've had to move into...
Yeah, well, in fairness, so it wasn't totally supporting me anywhere. I had to do side jobs
Okay.
as well. I did all menial kind of work as
Yeah,
well to
yeah.
support that.
Okay.
Because really, our main work with AFL was during wet seasons or holiday periods.
seasonal, okay.
Diversionary, so that wasn't enough.
Right.
And we picked up other clients as well, Uniting Care.
Yeah.
We worked and we did some amazing stuff, really. But to make it sustainable is a whole new ball game. And so I couldn't see a way of making that sustainable at that time.
Right.
So I had to get a job, which I moved into disability support. Yeah.
Right. As you were playing me that tune before, I bumped the table and made the record skip. Do you have tricks for, how do you play dance floors where people, are they always concrete or concrete tech? What are the
No,
secret?
not at all. So absolutely, you have to isolate the deck really as much as you can. And
Yeah.
in fact, at the hall, you saw the amount of power we were driving in the hall
Yeah.
on Saturday. That floor
Yeah.
was a suspended floor.
Yeah.
So one trick is to put it close to the wall. It doesn't bounce as much.
Okay.
The other one is we cut squash balls in half.
You do that, okay.
Yeah. And I have other rubber isolating pads which I put under the deck so the vibration doesn't affect the stylus too much.
Okay, right. There is some of those tricks there. And then, so where does it feel, where to next for Champion Sound? What are the things that you're thinking about looking forward?
Well, So I've probably not verbalised this well enough. I've tried to touch on it or intimate it, really. Ultimately, my own belief and our belief as a group is that creativity can provide opportunities for people. So that's the thing, going back to the story about Jamaica. They had nothing, they were marginalised, they were treated quite badly. But they didn't just lie down. They got something to say, they were creative, they formed a new genre of music, they created this music, they produced it, manufactured, sent it around the world, they got around the world, they influenced other people, they tour constantly. You can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
Video comes into it.
Yeah.
Multimedia comes into it, everything like that. And so coming here now to Australia and having gone through the Champion sound system or going through the sound system aspect, we try to develop a scene with that and to take these events to different communities. So like Inala, Zilmere, Logan, take it round to different places. We want to develop the workshop element to it much more to give other people an opportunity to do similar things or to express what their interest is. So the creative industries, there's a chap called Sir Ken Robinson. He coined the phrase, the creative industries, and in fact there's a great TED talk about it. About that.
Okay.
Because he gives examples about how people who didn't succeed at school, they were going to fail at school. But when it was found they were creative, that's how they developed their life. There's a woman who was a dancer at school, she couldn't sit still, she was kicked out of class.
Right.
But when she learned she was a dancer, man, she just flourished in that field.
Yeah. Because
so,
to this day, the school system is built for that industrial worker model. Like we're propping up this old thing, and now we live in a world where a 12-year-old entrepreneur from the bedroom has all the e-commerce tools at their availability to do things that a few generations ago we couldn't imagine.
Couldn't be imagined. And even though I love the creative thing, gosh, I'm still like a dinosaur. The whole, I'm into TikTok, I don't know anything about it, but I know people can make a living, for instance, from finding aspects. So that's all it is trying to encourage that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
And resilience, I think it all boils down to resilience. Things happen, you've got a mission, you're going in a particular direction.
Yeah.
It may not happen.
Yeah.
We don't give up, we just keep on going. So we want to do more events, we want to grow that. We run a disability hub at the moment at Nanda. We've got a group of young people with disabilities, and we call it a Creative Industries Pathway Program.
Right.
And we basically just say, what are you guys into? Many of them are into filming, making movies, or doing music, and we try to help them reach their goals through the creative industries.
Okay.
So, for instance, at the event we did at Musgrave Park, we had a media crew made up of members of that group. They went and they documented the event, they interviewed people. Social inclusion is big for us, it's giving everyone an opportunity to get out into the community, be part of the community.
Right.
Not non-judgmental. So we want a safe space where everyone can come together, be safe and showcase. So even performing, for instance, is a big deal for many people to stand up there. So we just want to give that opportunity and do it in a positive way.
Right.
So at our first event, I had 3 people from our group with disabilities performing at that event. A couple of them came to me after and said, "Chris, that's changed my life."
Wow.
Do you see what I mean? So I was going to say, which is so minor, it's not minor.
No.
But it can be seen as being so what. But for some people, it's life-changing.
Absolutely.
So we just want to keep that going and just grow it. The idea of having a youth centre would be great. In the UK, that was a common thing. Youth centres were around where young people could come together. They might have a recording studio there. They could plan, they could come together, talk to each other. These kind of things we don't seem to see over here. And again, so for me, it's about trying to find ways to engage creatively with the community and provide opportunities. So I can in no way be prescriptive. It's never about me or what I think. I just try to provide a forum, an environment where people can express themselves ultimately.
Amazing. Awesome. Beautiful. I love your work, and I definitely wish you the best of luck and hope that we can do a few projects together in the future. But Chris J, I feel like I've had a personal ethnomusicology session today, so thank you so much for sitting down. And it's great that you're looking at the records, because I'm wondering if you have a tune to wind things out today.
And so I'm just going to play this song. I just love the lyrics. on it. It's called Serve the People by Benjamin. It's a do-over of a Burning Spear track called Jah Is My Driver, is the original rhythm of this track, with just beautiful lyrics and very positive. And again, not controversial, but we like to address reality in our music.
Government, do what you say. Protect the children as they play. Government exists to serve the people, all of people, not just a few. The privileged with all their wealth and power, fire for leaders and tell them what to do. Serve the people, serve the people, not the people serving you. Serve the people, serve the people. Exploitation follow. Government protect the weak and needy. Help those who cannot help themselves. But instead, you help the rich and greedy to increase their ever-growing wealth. Inequality is rising higher. War population with nowhere to go. Burn with fire all the thief and liar. Help everyone to prosper and to grow. Serve the people, serve the people, not the people serving you. Serve the people, serve the people. Exploitation follow. Follow you. Exploitation follow. Follow you. Follow you. Exploitation follow. Government, please represent the people, the foundation of democracy. But divide and rule is your answer. Persecuting anyone who disagrees. Serve the people, serve the people, not the people serving you. Serve the people.
Chris J with the perfect tune to take us out, really speaking to the theme of resistance in the music. And just once again, just want to thank you for coming on Creative Tales today.
Thank you, Dylan, for giving me the opportunity.